Uh, okay, great then. So thank you again for joining us. Um, this is Women Plus in Geospatial. My name is Esther Onyekachi Owu. I'm the events lead for Women Plus in Geospatial. And in my day job, I work with a private geospatial consultancy in doing project management and also handling business development and strategy for them as well. A little intro, I'll just admit that person. Okay, so a little intro on Women Plus in Geospatial. We are an online and also a physical global community, an inclusive global community of women plus and underrepresented genders. And we strive to build a community that helps all of us to connect, support, empower, and also enable us to become strong leaders and change makers. And our vision is to forge a geospatial community where all genders can thrive. And from time to time, every other month, we host events like this, from fireside chats to webinar sessions. Some are technical, some are a bit more personal development or career development. And we hold sessions like this for our community and also the external members to be able to develop themselves. And today we have Helen and Katie, whom you'll be hearing from in a few minutes, who will be talking about finding the balance with the different hats that we wear. So at this point, I'll pass it on to Helen to introduce herself and also call on Katie. Over to you, Helen. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Thank you for organising the event and inviting me to join you. My name's Helen. I'm an independent geospatial consultant. I founded my company Map It Out about 8 years ago now, after working as GIS manager at an environmental consultancy for about 10 years. I've been a member of the Women Plus in Geospatial network for about 3 years now, not long after it first started, and was fortunate enough to be part of the first mentorship cohort as a peer mentor from 2019 to 2020. At times I've been a more active member of the network than others, and that's probably reflective of my attempts to strike a work-life balance somewhere along the line. I'm also a mother to two fabulous daughters, one teenage and one nearly teenage. And one of the prompts to me setting up my own business was a frustration that even though it looked like I kind of had it all in some ways by having a family and working in a part-time job, I also felt like very much the opposite was true, and that I was always in the wrong place at the wrong time. If I was at work, I felt like I ought to be looking after my children. If I was at home with the children, I felt like I ought to be working. And I think that's probably very common to a lot of parents. I'll be completely honest with you as well and say that in some ways I feel like a little bit of a fraud or an imposter talking about the subject because of finding this work-life balance. And I think I've spent a lot of my career trying to do that, but I'm certainly not an expert at it. I'm really happy to share my experiences, but I think hopefully, especially as we're quite a small group today, it would be great if we've got questions and comments and thoughts from participants, if people feel comfortable sharing as well. I think that would be really useful. So can I pass you across to Katie Grillo now, and perhaps Katie, if you can tell us a bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you, Helen. And first off, I just want to acknowledge what you said about feeling like an imposter. First of all, you are worthy and you're incredible and you deserve to be here and share your story. So thank you for doing that. But you're also not alone in feeling that. I think that's something that a lot of us struggle with. So this conversation today, I'm really excited about, because I think that finding the balance is something that everyone can relate to. And we all wear different types of hats. So my story is a little bit different from Helen's, where so my name is Katie Grillo. I am the GIS Web Technology Specialist at the City of Cambridge in Massachusetts, so based in the Boston area of the States, and I work in local government. And so one thing that's important to me is part of the balance that I find in life is kind of getting my hands into different things. So I work my full-time job at City of Cambridge, but then I'm also an adjunct professor at Jefferson University, where I teach a class called Internet GIS for design and development. And In addition to that, I'm also the board president of the Northeast ARC Users Group. So that is a GIS user group that's based in the Northeast here in the States. And we organize 2 conferences every year. And then when I became the president back in, in 2020, late 2020, I wanted to bring more of the community together while we were physically apart. So started hosting community events on a monthly basis. So similar to what Esther is doing here for the Women Plus and Geospatial group. I've been doing that specifically for folks in the Northeast and the States, but being virtual opens us up to a global audience. So we've had a lot more people joining, which has been really exciting. So 3 jobs. My friends like to joke that I have like 10 jobs because it definitely feels that way sometimes. I've also done some GIS consulting work on the side. And I know when I say on the side, you're like, what side? So we can talk about that later on today. But I'm really excited to be here, Esther. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to Women Plus and Geospatial for hosting this event. I think Helen, to kind of kick things off, maybe can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved with different responsibilities and kind of how maybe that's changed and evolved as you kind of progress and grow within your life?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I suppose when I was younger, initially, I very much defined myself with my career. My career was very central to who I was, and my measures of success were all related to what I was achieving in my career. So whether it was, new technical skills that I'd learned, or promotions, or professional qualifications, it was very career focused. And I think in common with a lot of people working in geospatial in a way, as technical experts, we all want to be the best at what we're doing. And I see that with a lot of my peers in geospatial. We very much strive towards, trying to be the best we can be in what we're doing. And for me, having children was quite a change in that point. When my career was no longer the main focus. And becoming a parent, you're trying to, oh, I'm so sorry, my phone's, I thought I had silenced. And again, as you get older, your responsibilities may change again, where you might find yourself supporting or trying to be there to support your own parents as they get older as well. So yeah, my responsibilities throughout life have certainly changed. And I think what I've reflected on as a result of that is that how we define success is a very personal thing, and I recognize that everybody in the community has their different challenges that they're facing, and I guess it's really important that we all support each other as much as we can and recognize the challenges that we're all facing. And if we can support each other both individually and as the Women Plus and Geospatial network and as a wider society, then the better we'll all be. And Katie, as you said, I know you talked about a number of the different hats that you wear, and you do a phenomenal amount. So I wonder if you could tell us a bit about how you balance that schedule and keep all those plates spinning at the same time.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, Helen, I want to put you on the spot just with a follow-up question to what you said, because I think it's really important to acknowledge what you were saying about success and how we all kind of view that differently. And I'm wondering, in terms of like you feeling supported or supporting others, like what have been some things that you've noticed along your journey of either how you've felt supported or how you've been able to pass that support on to others?
I think both have been true throughout my career. I feel really lucky to have been supported by, both people in my home life, but also supportive managers where I've worked. But it's also been great to feel, for example, through the mentorship program with Women in Geospatial, to be able to support others. And now I find as well, I feel able to dip in here and there and support others in, it doesn't have to be in a formal mentorship way, but it might just be looking at somebody's CV if they send it to you, or having a chat with somebody who's in an early career stage, and it might just be a half hour of time here and there, but it's really nice to be able to give back in those sorts of ways. I find that really, really valuable.
Definitely. Yeah. You and I had talked at one point about the importance of kind of volunteering and getting involved in some things that might be considered extracurricular, but just the way that that makes us feel when we give back can be such a big recharge to the system. So it can kind of energize you, even though you're adding more to your plate. It acts as sort of an energy generator in some ways.
Definitely,
So I love that.
definitely.
Yeah. And hopefully after this event, maybe Esther can share more information about the mentorship program, because I think that that's a fantastic program that I would love to see more women and more folks getting involved in.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Yeah. So you had asked kind of about, yeah, I guess about how I kind of find my balance. And you said kind of keep all those, juggling all those balls in the air, right? Honestly, my calendar is my best friend. I think that if Google Calendars went down, then I would just kind of not know what to do with myself anymore. I've found that that budgeting my time has been really, really helpful. You know, we all have our to-do lists. We all make a list of all the things that we want to accomplish, all the things we want to do. But I think there's a gap in what we want to do and how much time it actually takes to do those things. So just trying to map that out in more of a linear way to say, okay, well, I want to do all of these different things, but well, this one's only going to take me a half hour. This one might take me like 6 hours. So then just kind of chunkating out the time to make sure that you can dedicate to these different things. And also through that, just being really mindful of your transitions. When I switch, like, you know, when my day job ends at 5 o'clock, and maybe I then am going to go teach, or I'm then going to go write some emails or do some other things for the Northeast Arc users group, just kind of taking a moment to make sure that I wrap up my workday and take a breath or document is really helpful. You know, just ping a note to yourself of like, where did you leave off? So that when you come to pick that thing back up again, you know where to start, rather than kind of fumbling through your notes and your memory banks to try to see what you've done and haven't done yet.
I agree. I think that's so important. I think that taking just a few minutes at the end of a task before you transition onto something else is so, it took me quite a long time to learn that, I think, but you really thank yourself for, you know, it's almost like you're passing it across to somebody else if you were being that kind to somebody to say, here is where you need to pick up when you next carry on. And I wondered, Katie, that just made me think as well about whether how you manage to, because you've got so much going on, how you manage to keep the big picture in mind rather than just kind of do the little tasks as well. It's like you're, you know, because you're obviously managing to hold on to the strategy and the bigger picture, but I wondered if you had any tips as to how you manage that amongst everything.
Yeah, I think that's, so I know a lot of people set like New Year's resolutions, for example, right? And you think about the big picture of what you want to accomplish within a new year. And there's all kinds of statistics about the success and failure rates of New Year's New Year's resolutions that people make, but it's all based on like the longevity of things. Like, and the reason that people aren't as successful with New Year's resolutions is because they say it in January and they never check in with themselves again in February or March or any other months. So I try, I don't always do it, I admit, but my goal is at the end of every month, I set aside just an hour for myself to kind of wrap up that month and start the next one, because our brains are really wired to kind of open and close different sections of our life. Like, that's why we do New Year's resolutions at the beginning of the year, right? So kind of just try to carry that through my whole year and use these start and stop points as a bit of a motivator. So every month I write down my goals for that month, and then I reflect and say, okay, well, what did I feel successful in? What did I feel I maybe wasn't as successful in, and why? And ask the question of why did that happen? And then I also follow up with, what can you do to make the next month better? That's been really helpful.
I think that sounds great.
Yeah. Yeah, and so Helen, just thinking about like your introduction. I mean, you are a mother. That in and of itself is a full-time job. And I am someone who's considering motherhood myself and kind of wondering how that may change and impact my life. And I'm just curious to hear more about your experience being a professional and also being a mother, and kind of how you find the balance between like family care and growing your career.
I think it's a really difficult balance, if I'm honest. And I think most parents would probably say that, because I think all of a sudden your focus is, very much split into different areas. For me, the things that have made the big difference are having, a support network. My husband absolutely does an equal share of childcare and household responsibilities, but I really recognise that that's not the case for the majority of women around the world. Still at the moment, although we're in 2022, I think, women still shoulder the burden of household tasks, and even those who often sort of are almost there with equality, they're still shouldering the administrative burden of, perhaps booking the after school childcare or whatever it is, those sorts of things. So I think it's quite, I feel very, very lucky to have that as a starting point, and that certainly helped for me to be able to focus on my career as well as family. I'm going to plug the mentoring program again, because I think that's been really important for me, as well as to find that balance. Because Katie, when you were talking before about, setting monthly sort of the bigger goals and checking in on them, that's for me what the mentorship scheme certainly helped me achieve, to sort of have that moment of accountability and look in and see where I wanted to be going and whether I was achieving that, and if not, why not, and all of those sorts of things. And then again, I suppose it's a very personal thing, but for me, what works is to be very flexible. At times, I know my work will take priority over my home life, and at other times, my home life will take priority over my work life, and the two are very much merged, and all my to-do lists and calendars are a mix of both things, and so I'm almost giving them as equal a priority as I can, I guess. And just being able to be flexible, and I guess that's the privilege of being able to work for myself, means that I can set my own working hours, and that might mean that sometimes I'm working late every evening for weeks on end, but other times I'm not, and I can be much more flexible and be there for for the family. So I think that flexibility has been really, really important part of it for me.
Yeah, I think I'm wondering, because I think it's really important when you said about acknowledging that women still are carrying a lot more in personal life than or home life, I should say. Like, there's a certain expectation that's still just kind of unspoken and put on us. But I think that's fantastic that you have a partner that is helping you a lot. Something I heard once is this idea that, like, don't let perfection be the enemy of productivity. And I think sometimes, especially with home life, we can feel a little particular about how things are supposed to get done. This idea of perfectionism and making sure that everything looks good to the outside world, and the house is clean and the kids are clean and everything's running smoothly, right? But sometimes it's you kind of need to, like, be a bit more humble with how you accept the help from others, and like maybe your spouse won't load the dishwasher the right way or the same way that you do it, but hey, they're doing it, so just kind of accepting that help, right?
Yeah, I think that's really important, going with it and not sweating the small stuff, not worrying about the things that actually in the big picture don't matter so much. Whether that's, apologizing for the house being messy if people come over, it's like, well, it's no more my responsibility than, my husband's responsibility. It's that sort of, which is just that inherent thing that I think a lot of women do carry, and it's really good to challenge and question that, I think, because it's very hard to be leaders and change makers if we're also doing the dishes. It sounds ridiculous to say, but I think because women around the world are doing just that bit more, it's like sometimes a lot more, sometimes just 20% more, but it's still it still does have an impact on the mental space we all have to be able to think of the bigger picture and to work towards the bigger picture. So
Yeah. And it's important to ask for help when you need it, right? That you don't
absolutely,
have to feel, like you have to do it all or have to shoulder it all. It's okay to ask for
yeah,
help, right?
100%, 100%. And as you said, you know, to let go of the ideas of perfection are really, yeah, really helpful as well. I think it's really good for all of us to do that.
Yeah. Difficult, but good.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, Katie, one thing that I've dipped in and out of, but I haven't, I feel like I would like to focus on more in my life is the volunteering aspect and the community building. And I know it's something you do a lot of, and you find it really an important part of what you do as well. And I just wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you fit it in and how you find it.
Yeah. I think so I started with volunteer work just after college. I actually worked for a company that was doing volunteer tourism. So we would organize travel for folks, but it would have a volunteer component to it. So it would kind of be more like giving back to the community that you're going to visit, as opposed to just sitting on the beach and drinking Mai Tais, which, don't get me wrong, is also great. But but there's something about connecting with others that you get when you volunteer that's very different from when it's a paid position. And I think maybe it was me just getting involved with that in my early 20s and seeing the impact that you can make. And then again, as I said earlier, just kind of feeling that, feeling like what that does to ourselves, of like the energy that it can bring you. I feel like um we feel so much better when we do something for someone else rather than when we do it for ourselves. Which is a whole nother topic we could get into. But I feel like just with volunteering, yes, it can often feel like a back burner or like a side type thing. But for me, it really helps me feel balanced. It really helps to make me feel a greater sense of meaning and accomplishment and connection that maybe I don't always feel when someone's paying me to do it. If that makes
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds really positive and really, and I'm getting what you're saying is you're putting it on the same level of priority as the other stuff that you're doing as well. It's not like an add-on, you know, a bolt-on to sort of to fit in as on the side. It's really up there with all of the other priorities, which is really, yeah, great.
Yeah, and that's hard to put it at that level. And I understand that not everyone would have the time and the space to do that. But I think that is and maybe it's a difference, even like as we said earlier, like about the fact that I'm not yet a mother, and I'm sure that that will change for me when that time comes. But I feel like at this point in my life, where I have the space, I want to prioritize it. And honestly, I don't really like watch TV, or I don't really do a lot of other like chill on the couch relaxing things. To me, I get more enjoyment from being out in nature or being with people. And so I think that's part of it too, is that sometimes the volunteering, like even just, I volunteered at Franklin Park Zoo for a while in Boston, and just going and hanging out with animals every Friday afternoon and telling people about animals just felt like, I mean, first of all, animals are some of the most entertaining TV you could possibly watch, right? So it's just kind of finding like, what are you passionate about? And then how can you tie that into something that can really like make your heart feel good.
I think that's excellent, and it's I think the one of the good things that the pandemic has brought is that we can all volunteer. It doesn't have to be in person as well. Like we can give our time in so many different ways now as well. You know, whether it's with the Women Plus and Geospatial Network or wider, or you know, like you say, at a zoo, or it can be such a wide variety of things. But finding your passion and spending
Yeah,
time on
and I
that is
and I do want to acknowledge the fact that a lot of these organizations, like I'm talking about the Northeast Arc Users Group that I'm a part of, but Women Plus and Geospatial, I mean, there's hundreds of organizations out there that are doing really incredible and really impactful work, and most of them are volunteer led.
yeah.
So it's also, there's a need there to be able to like all of you that showed up here today, this is made possible by people who are volunteering their time, and that's something that you can do too. And a lot of times it's not as heavy as of a lift as it might feel like from the outside. So I encourage you to just try it. Budget in that hour in your calendar to explore different volunteer opportunities or different GIS communities and see how you might be able to get involved in them.
Yeah, that's really positive. Should we open up questions and comments and thoughts from
Please.
everybody else here? I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on what we've talked about so far, or their own experiences or questions.
All right, so maybe I'll go first. Esther here. So I think I'd like to dive a bit into maybe for people who are just starting their careers, right? And they feel the need to want to volunteer, give up some of their time, but also being that in their early careers, they're not at manager level where they can exactly delegate a lot of their work. And maybe on the home front as well, you're quite engaged in a few other things. What are your tips for them to be able to manage their time across this different buckets effectively, and so that they don't burn out along the way?
I can jump in on that. I think the most important place to start is really to find what you're passionate about. It's for me that's GIS, and that's mapping, and that's nerds, and that's community. But for you, maybe it's animals, or maybe it's nature, or kayaking, or whatever it might be, or like environmental justice, or anything that it could be. Just think about what you're passionate about and follow that passion. Like, honestly, that's what makes it more achievable, in my opinion, because you have this really strong connection and desire to want to do it, rather than just forcing yourself to support something that you might not be as passionate or feel as great of a connection to. Helen, what do you think?
Yeah, I think I agree with all of what you've said, but also recognize that it can be difficult. And as Esther, you said early in your career, you can be, you can't necessarily delegate tasks to other people. You can be working really hard. I know that there was a stage in my career early on when I just felt like I was thinking maps and GIS the whole day, and it was a long day, and I came home and the last thing I wanted to think about was more maps and GIS. And I'm really pleased that that's changed now and my balance is different. And once again, I'm enthusiastic about it, which is a really nice place to be, which is, how it should be. But I suppose think about what nourishes you, I guess, is what you need in your own space and time, and it will change over time. It's not linear. You're not always necessarily going to have the time to dedicate to things like that. But as Katie said, I think if you find the things that you're passionate about, then it's focus on those, go after those, and don't worry too much about the other things that some of them might fall along the wayside.
I see Jenny's hand up. Jenny, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. Should I open my video? Yeah.
That's up to you.
All right, let's try it. Hello.
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 I just want to say, first of all, thank you to Helen and Katie. It was amazing to hear a point of view. It's like it's my first time on, or I'm very new to the group and to this whole community, and just hearing all women in all sorts of life in different hats, and to hear it's so inspiring. So thank you for that. And I wanted to, Katie, or both of you talked about a little bit of imposter syndrome, or feeling like an imposter. And right now, I guess it's where I am and how I'm feeling. So what do you guys do, or any suggestions to get out of that cycle? Yeah.
I think, am I right, Esther, you might be able to help here, but I think there was a really good workshop on this not long ago that the Women Plus in Geospatial group ran, and I didn't manage to make it, so, but I did hear good things. Am I right?
Yes, there was. I'll look for the link and drop it in the chat while you're talking.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think too, just to speak to that, I don't. So something that I felt is really helpful is if you think about your best friend in life, or someone that you love, that you really, really love, you have so much love and respect for that person. And if they came to you and told you that they weren't good enough, or that they couldn't do something, or that they didn't belong, then how would you talk to them? You know, you would love them and support them, and you'd say, no, like, stop that, girl, like, you're incredible, like, you are worthy and you are smart and you belong here. And I challenge you, it feels weird, I admit, but try to do that with yourself. Like, treat yourself as your own best friend. And I mean, this is a little personal, but I amp myself up sometimes, especially before calls like this or events. You know, I'll take a quick moment and look in the mirror and just remind myself why I'm doing this, and tell myself that I'm belong here and that I'm worthy. And it's yeah, I'll admit it feels a bit weird at first, like you are talking to yourself, but try to just be your own best friend. And I feel like that the imposter syndrome is still there. I think we all will feel that. We'll continue to feel that, but just giving yourself some love and grace, I feel like can go a really long way.
And I think it's something that women and other underrepresented genders do often. It seems to be something that a lot of us feel more strongly than others. And I suppose it's just recognizing that and sitting with that in a way. You know, there's that thing about women when they're applying for jobs, they have to feel like they fulfill every single criteria more often than not. Whereas men often go, oh, I've got 60% of that, I'll go for it, give it a shot. And so, you know, just it's quite helpful, I find, sometimes to be armed with some statistics on things like that, because it can kind of make you go, no, it's all right. I can do it, and I can push myself, and it's worth it, the benefits of pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone. Like I say, today, I feel very much beyond my comfort zone, but it's really positive. It's a positive thing to do. And I think the more we all do that, I think not only is it good for us, it's good for the whole community as well, I think, because there's very much that, that thing of you can't be what you can't see. So if you're not seeing women who are happy talking about their experiences, or being up there leading organizations, all of those sorts of things, then I sort of looking to the next generation and thinking, well, I want them to not have any of the barriers, or to have fewer barriers than we've had. So I think that's also a really positive thing for me in battling any sort of imposter syndrome type thoughts.
Yeah, and also to circle back to that mentorship program, I mean, when you reach a hand back to help somebody who might be like just getting started in their career, it really can be impactful, because then they can kind of see forward of like where they could potentially get to, right? And even if you're that younger person right now, think back to like even just someone that's younger than you, or someone that's earlier in their career than you are, and you can see the kind of growth that happens over time. So Helen, I think that's a really good point too. Sorry, Jenny, were you going to say something else?
No, just thank you so much. And also the mentorship it's you guys had one right now, I finished, right?
I think it will be starting up again in September, but I don't know, Katie.
Yeah,
or
maybe
Esther
knows. Yeah.
Thank you guys.
But
yeah,
certainly
thing too.
Sorry, go on.
Well, I was just going to mention a book. I think it's called Women Don't Owe You Pretty. And it's just a bunch of like short stories and little like poems and things like that just kind of acknowledge the societal pressure that women feel to kind of have it all together, and also wear our high heels and our makeup. And it's just it's really empowering. I read it quite a few years ago, so I'm trying to remember. I think it was called Women Don't Know You Pretty. Great, thank you, Jenny. Did anyone else have any questions or comments? Helen, I'm curious about something because you've started your own company, and to me, that's something I've always kind of dreamed of doing. Like, it sounds, being your own boss kind of sounds like the best thing ever, right? That you were saying that you have that flexibility and you can kind of make your own schedule and that kind of thing. But I'm curious your experience with that, or if you have any recommendations for women that might be interested in kind of going off on their own and doing what you've done.
Yeah, for me personally, it was one of the best things I've ever done. I was terrified before doing that, but it works really well for me. I really like being accountable to myself, and but in terms of things that made the process easier, I think being part of a network like this is really helpful because you can share experiences. Also, I was fortunate enough to sort of just have conversations with people where I thought there was probably, I've got sort of a number of clients who I work with on a very regular basis, which makes it much more secure. So I'm still very much in charge of my own time. And of course, it's still within the bounds of the fact that I need to earn money. And if a client asks for a job to be done within a certain time frame, then of course I will do everything I can to get a job done when they want it done. So often I'll move mountains to get something done by a particular time. So it's not all like, roses and wonderful flexibility, but it works really well for me, being able to juggle and keep the plate spinning, as it were. So yeah, and I guess for anyone who is thinking of it, thinking of the bigger picture stuff, like, you don't get paid for your holidays or for time off because you're unwell and all of those sorts of things. Just being aware of, you might want to dip your toes into it as a thing whilst you're working to get into it. But if you go fully freelance or into consultancy as your main source of income, just be really clear on how much you will need to charge your time at to justify you doing that, I suppose. Yeah, there's a whole, I think we could go off on a whole other topic of it, but yeah, for me personally, it's been a really positive experience.
Yeah, and I want to acknowledge too that especially in the States, there's a big difference between whether you're working for public sector or private sector. And so I work in local government, and we have a very closed week, I guess you'd say. Like, I work 37 and a half hours a week, and that's it. You don't get paid or rewarded for doing more than that necessarily. It's very different from if you're working in like consultancy, where you have different deadlines or different projects that might require you to work nights and weekends, that kind of thing. So I do feel it's really important for me to acknowledge that by working in local government, it does free up all of my evenings and all of my weekends to be able to do these other passion projects and things on the side.
But that's a really positive thing as well, isn't it? That you've chosen an employment that will work for you to be able to balance it with your other hats as well. And so that's a really,
Yeah.
It's really important and really.
I did the private sector for probably about 2 months and then was like, I can't handle this. So it's okay to feel that way sometimes, and like, don't be afraid to make changes in your career. Like, if something's really not feeling well, or if you feel like every day when you get home from work you're just completely exhausted and overwhelmed, then I encourage you to maybe reflect on that and do some real like deep soul searching of like what changes you could make just to make your 9 to 5, like your day to day, better. And if anybody is wants to talk about that more, then please reach out to me, because that was a really, really big thing that I realized in my early 20s, and I feel like it's shaped my life for the best.
I think that's really, really insightful. And I guess I'd encourage everybody to ask other people. Like, I think that's where someone like Women Plus in Geospatial and the Slack channel is really helpful. We can have these conversations and ask people about their experiences and what they enjoy about where they work and what they might not, enjoy so much. And I think, yeah, we should all use the network as much as possible to find out and understand each other's experiences. It will help make those sorts of early career decisions that can be huge differences, as you say, as to whether you reach the end of each day exhausted and frazzled, or you can say, tick, yeah, that was a good day, I'm ready for another day tomorrow. It's a big difference. Thanks, Esther. I see you've just put something in the chat about the mentorship program. It's probably worth mentioning as well. I think the mentorship program is always struggling for mentors. There are always more mentees than mentors, I believe. So if you feel that you could be a mentor or a peer mentor, there's always somebody going to be, a couple of years behind you who will really value your experience. So I think it's really good to say, don't feel shy about putting yourself forward for that. It's a really positive experience.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions or thoughts from anybody?
Well, Helen, maybe, I mean, folks can still feel free to raise their hand or put things in the chat, but maybe we should kind of start to talk about some of our final thoughts or summary. Do you want to kick us off?
I can do. I suppose, in summary, I guess most of us get pulled in different directions throughout our lives, and very few of us have the privilege, or not necessarily privilege, of just focusing on our careers and ignoring everything else. And I'm not sure many of us would want that, because life's sort of tapestry is richer than that. There's a lot more to all of our lives than just that. But I think you've got to decide for yourself what your version of success is, and for me, that's probably the most important thought of this session. That if you know what your version of success is, it's not somebody else's, and don't try and measure yourself by somebody else's version of their success. Then get involved in the things that are important to you, and focus less on the things that aren't so important.
Yeah, I love that, because you're the only one that can really answer that question too. So, it is important to take the time to kind of reflect on that. But I agree that events like this and communities like this, it's great to come and hear other perspectives and maybe kind of just get you thinking about what success means for you and what that might look like. Yeah. I think it's acknowledging again, like what you said about that we all wear a lot of different hats, and whether that's just in your career or your personal life or family life, whatever it is, I feel like it's an interesting part of aging and growing, is that it's very rare that you kind of take a hat off and you're like, oh, thank you, that was a nice hat, but I'm done with that now. Yes. We just have a tendency to like stack them on and on and on, and I'm not going to sit here and I know this has been a really positive conversation, but I want to acknowledge that it is really hard, and I do experience burnout, and I feel that, and some days are better than others, and I think it's just important to be kind to yourself, and kind of like what we were talking about with Jenny is just like showing love and compassion for yourself, that every day doesn't have to be perfect, and that sometimes that contrast is the best part. To be able to say like, wow, today was incredible, and then to be able to say, or today was so much better than yesterday. Like even just saying that sometimes can feel really good. So just being kind of kind and humble through the process, that not every day is going to be perfect, and that I think it's really important to tap into the things that do make you feel really good and feel really positive, and help you to recharge, whether that's, you know, a hug from a loved one or a walk in the woods by yourself, like whatever you need to do to just take a pause. I think it's really, really important to make the time and space to do that.
Yeah, I fully agree. And I think now more than ever, you know, we're all living through a pandemic. I don't think we're quite in a post-pandemic world, and I think a lot of us are exhausted and, you know, fragmented. And so I think you're so right, Katie. You know, whether doing that thing that makes you feel good, and whether it is just sitting at your desk going, do you know what, it's hard today. I'm going to go off and do a 20-minute walk in the woods before I come back and try again. It's, you know, finding those things that make us feel good is really, really important.
Yeah.
Fully agree.
I know we were talking earlier about my calendar and like how I schedule things, but I think it's important too to schedule your own happiness. Like when I make my to-do list every morning, I add things to my to-do list, like go for a walk, spend time in my hammock. Maybe in the summertime, it's like just look at the flowers or like something, you know, something. Just put it in your to-do list so that you hold yourself accountable to actually doing it. And then, Helen, as you were saying, when you have those moments where you're just like, oh, today is not the day, then I pull up my to-do list and I'll go to that happiness section and be like, okay, which one of these things am I going to do right now? And I feel like that's been really, really helpful for me. And also something that feels a little weird, but it's also been good is kind of scheduling your conversations or connections with people. One of my good friends, we actually started something where we call each other every Friday at 1:30. And she, you know, she and I are both very, very, very busy in our lives. She just had a baby. She just started a new job. She just moved. You know, it's like so many things are happening for her, and you all have heard what's going on for me. But just to schedule that time, even if like the phone call lasts for 5 minutes, at least to like hear that person's voice and check in with them, I feel has been really impactful for me. And shout out to that person in my life, because she knows who she is and she's incredible. So.
I love that. I think that's brilliant.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you, everyone.
Sorry,
yeah, I wonder if Esther has anything else to add.
Okay, that's what it look like. Thank you so much, Helen. Thank you so much, Katie. Can you both hear me okay? Looks like my internet is okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right, good. Thank you so much. This was such an enlightening session. I'm certain that others who couldn't make it today will get the good feedback and information and tips and insights from watching before you leave there. Just like the mentorship program was referenced a couple of times during the conversation, I've put the links in the chat, but please also, if you're going to be watching this on YouTube, visit our Women Plus in Geospatial websites and look up for the mentorship program tab and keep up with what's happening there. One of the cohorts just finished. We should be opening for applications, I think sometime in August, September, I think. And the applications will run through till early October or late September, early October for the next cohort to begin. So please do feel free to apply as a mentor, as a mentee, or as a peer mentor. It's really, really great. And if you'd like to take Katie's advice and much further to go and up your volunteering game, and you think that Women Plus in Geospatial is the platform for you, visit the website as well. We'll be making some call out for volunteers. And thank you so much to our few intimate persons who joined us today and made this conversation really worthwhile. And thank you so much, Katie. Thank you, Helen. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Yes, thank you all so much. And thank you, Helen, for taking the chance and doing this with me.